Ready. Namaste and good morning to all of you. Let's start the class with some prayers. Om Parthaye Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayan Swayam Vyasen Grathitam Puran Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritvashneem Bhagavati Mashtadashadhyayane Amatvam Anusandhane Bhagavad Gita Bhagavadveshane नमो अस्तुते व्यास विशाल बुद्धे फुल अरविंद आयत पत्र नेत्र येन तव्या भारत तैल पूर्णः प्रज्वलितो ज्ञान मया प्रदीपः परपान पारी जाताये तोत्र वेत्र एक पाने ज्ञान मुद्राये कृष्णाये गीता अमृत दुहे नमः सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोगदा गोपाल नंदना पार्थो वत्सा सुधीर भोगता दुग्धम गीता अमृतम महत वसुदेव सुतम देवम कंस चानूरमर्दनम देवकी परमानंदम कृष्णम वंदे जगत गुरुम भीष्म द्रोण तटा जयद्रथ जला गांधार नीलोत्पला शल्ये ग्रावती कृपेन वहने कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थाम विकर्ण घोर मकरा दुर्योधन अवर्तने सोतीर्णा खलु पांडवैरन्नदी वर्तका केशवः पाराशरे वत्सरोजमलम गीता अर्थ गंधोटकम नाना ख्यानक केसरम हरि कथा संबोधन अबोधितम लोके सज्जन षट पदय रह पे पिये मानम मुदा भूयाद भारत पंकजम कलिमल प्रध्वंसी न श्रेयसे मूकम करोति वाचालम पंगुम लंघ्यते गिरन यत्कृपातमहं वंदे परमानंद माधवम यम ब्रह्म वरुण इंद्र रुद्र मरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्ये स्तवे वेदे सांग पद क्रमोपनिषदे गायन्ति यम सामगा ध्यानवस्थे तद्गतेन मनसः पश्यन्ति यम योगिनो यस्यन्तं न विदुषुर असुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः. So we are on chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, Atma Sanyam Yoga. And Lord Krishna himself is teaching us how to meditate. Look at how fortunate we are. In detail, he described it to us how our seat should be when we meditate, how our body should be when we are meditating. Rest of the day also, what should be we will doing? He said, live a life of moderation. Don't stay hungry too much and don't eat too much. Don't stay awake all the time and don't sleep too much. Okay? So in all your activities in life also, he says moderation. And then during meditation, what did he say? Keep your mind still. Just like a flame of a candle in a windless place does not move, the same way our mind should not move. One-pointed concentration will take us towards meditation. And that's where we ended our class last week. Verse number 19 of chapter number 6. Yatha deepo nivatsato na ingate sa upma samrita. Yoginaha yat chitasya yunjata yogam atmana. Okay, so this is where he is giving us the analogy of that flame of a candle. So he says, control your mind. Practice it. Now we'll see in next 4 verses, it's like a group of 4 verses together. After having making our mind one single pointed, what would be the stages of progress? Because we need to know what's really happening. Am I moving upward or not? Am I becoming a better practitioner or not? We should check ourselves. So the 4 verses, let's read them first and then we'll talk all 4 together. Verse number 20. Yatra upramte chitam niruddham yoga sevya. Yatra cha eva atmana atmanam pashyan atmani tushyati. Yatra means where. Upramte. Rejoice, inner joy. Upramte. Rejoicing that upward. Chittam mind. Niruddham restrained. Yoga sevya. By the practice of yoga. Yatra means where. Cha means and. Ev only. Atmana. By the self. That means purified mind. Atmanam, the self. This means the soul. Pashyan, seeing, beholding. Atmani, in the self. Tushyati, is satisfied. He says when the mind, restrained by the practice of yoga, attains quietude, the inner joy, and when seeing the self by the self, he is satisfied in his own self. So through the purification of the mind, when the mind becomes so pure, the soul or the self is directly perceived through realization. Okay. And what is a purified mind? How do we know our mind is purified or not? Restful mind is a pure mind. The mind does not flicker. If your mind listens to you, you tell your mind to go there and it goes there and comes back. That is a pure mind. Listens to you. Restless mind is a dirty mind. Agitated mind is a dirty mind. So we got to look at that. Is my mind in my control? What is the next progress or next step? Sukham atyantikam yat tat buddhi grahyam atindriyam veti yatra nacha ev ayam sthita chalati tatvata. Sukham, bliss. Atyantikam, limitless. जिसका अंत ना हो. Infinite. Atyantikam. Yat means which, that means that. Buddhi grahyam, that which can be grasped by reasoning. Buddhi is reasoning. Atindriyam, transcending the senses. Beyond senses. Atindriyam. Veti, knows. Yatra, where. Na means not. Cha means and. Ev, even. Ayam, this. Sthita, established or situated. Chalati, moves, deviates. Tatvata, from the reality. When he, that means the yogi, the practitioner, feels that infinite bliss, which can be grasped by the pure intellect, and which transcends the senses, wherein established he never moves from the reality. So with the practice of meditation, our intellect becomes subtle. And with the help of this subtle intellect, you are feeling that infinite bliss, which is beyond the happiness which we feel through the senses. And we all know what senses are. Our eyes, our ears, our nose, our taste, our touch. Those are the senses. So this bliss is not grasped through the senses. This bliss you are feeling with the help of the subtle intellect, not the sharp intellect. subtle intellect. That kind of a buddhi. So you have not transcended the buddhi yet, but you are using the buddhi. You have transcended the senses and the body. So this kind of a sukham atyantikam. Because the sukh which we feel with the help of our senses, they are limited. Eyes can see only so far or so much. Tongue can taste only so much. All the senses are limited, but this is a limitless, infinite bliss. There's no end to it. And meditation is taking us there. Our own practice of our dhyan is taking us there. That's why I said these 4 verses, 20, 21, 22, 23, they are signposts for a practitioner. Let's look at number 22. Yam labdhava cha aparam labham manyate na adhikam tata yasmin sthita na dukhena guruna api vichalyate. Yam means which, labdhava, having attained, cha means and, aparam, other, labham, gain, manyate, thinks, considers, na means not, adhikam, greater, tataha, then that, yasmin, in which, sthita, established, na means not, dukhen, by sorrow, guruna, heavy, big, api means even, vichalyate, is moved or shaken. He says, which having obtained. What having obtained? What is that which? That infinite bliss through meditation. So after obtaining that, he thinks, that yogi thinks, there's nothing superior to it. Normally our mind keeps on thinking maybe something better. You go somewhere, you think maybe somewhere is better. Let's go there. But after experiencing this infinite bliss, you know there's nothing better. Wherein established, he is not moved even by heavy sorrow. There could be a biggest tragedy in life, but that yogi is not moved by it. That means he is situated in that contact with that infinite. Okay, so meditation will take us, it will give us that strength, it will give us that firmness, it will give us the real purpose of life. That's how great this practice of dhyan is. Then continuation of this. Tam vidyat dukh sanyog viyogam yog sangitam sa nischena yogavyah yoga anirvin chetasaha. Tam means that. Vidyat, let him know. Dukh sanyog viyogam, a state of severance from union with pain. Dukh sanyog viyog. Okay, you got to think about these 2 words. So a state of severance from a union with pain. This could be a definition of yoga also. Yoga sangitam, called by the name of yoga. So means that nishchayen, resolutely, with determination, yoktavyaha, should be practiced. Yoga anirvin chetasaha, with mind steady and undespairing. That means with an undeviating mind. Let that be known, he says. The severance from union with the pain is yoga. See, earlier he defined yoga as yoga karmasu kaushalam. Doing your duty skillfully, he says that's yoga. Over here, he's saying the severance from union with the pain is yoga. Why he's saying that? Because a yogi is totally immersed in God. It's like a melted into the divinity, and there is no sorrow or no pain or no negativity in God. So in a yogi, there can never be any pain. Okay, so the severance from the union with the pain is yoga. Underline this. This yoga should be practiced with determination and with a mind steady and undespairing. See, that's why God's name is what? Sat Chit Ananda. Today is Ramnami. Tulsidas ji in Ramcharitmanas, what did he say? He said, Ananda Sindhu Madhye Tav Vasa. Bin jane kat maras pyasa. That means God, who is the ocean of bliss. Ananda Sindhu. Ananda is bliss. Sindhu is the ocean. God, who is the ocean of bliss, is seated within you. Without knowing him, how can your thirst for happiness be satiated? We want to let go of this hunger and thirst, but we are going towards the wrong place. That Ananda Sindhu is right here. And Lord Krishna is telling us how to get in touch with that forever. So these 4 verses together give a complete picture of the state of yoga. And Lord Krishna is ending with this verse number 23. It's like a very powerful call to all of us, the students, that everyone should practice this yoga of meditation and self-development. That's why I told you earlier, Lord Krishna is saying that. Shouldn't we listen to him? He's almost cryingly say that. Hey people, you are in pain, and this pain can be ended by doing this. That's all. He's shaking us up by these beautiful, strong words, but which we can understand also. So mind should be restrained. Serenity should be felt. Only then we will gain the experience of ourself, which is our true nature. That's why we meditate. So this self-rediscovery of the mind to be itself, in fact, nothing other than a state of infinite bliss. And this can take place during meditation very easily. And this bliss is not an objective experience. Anything we experience with our senses, that's an objective experience. Eyes can see only the object. Ears can hear the sound, which is again another form of object. This is a subjective experience. That's why he used the word ati indriya. You got to transcend the senses in order to feel this. And this bliss of self-recognition is perceivable through the pure intellect, Sattva Buddhi, it's called. Sattva Buddhi. Not that Buddhi which keeps on arguing, discussing. No, this is a very subtle Buddhi. Suksham and Sukshamtaya Buddhi. Because the doubts arise in the Buddhi. But in Sattva Buddhi, no doubt is there because subjective experience, there's no doubt at all. And then sometimes we think that once we have experienced this, maybe we will slip back. We'll have to start all over again. But to remove this possible misunderstanding, Lord Krishna is telling us that once you are established, you will never depart from your real state. There's no falling from here. Okay. Sometimes we hear stories that some sadhus, they fell. That means they did not reach there. They were on the path, but they slipped. Because we got to remember what is Lord Krishna's words are when we are studying this. So this self is to be known, and the means of knowing this goal, as well as the state of experience, is called yoga. Definition of yoga, Lord Krishna has given us. So the state of yoga implies both attainment of bliss and freedom from misery. Remember that. Almost like a two-fold. The stage of perfection has to be reached through determined practice. It's not only once in a while practice, not a lukewarm practice. So yoga is nothing but a renunciation of the contact with the sorrows and a direct entry into the halls of bliss, which is our true nature, according to Lord Krishna in these verses over here. Okay. So now, in the next verse, he explains how we must practice meditation. Sankalap prabhavan kaman tyaktva sarvan asheshatah manasa ev indriye gramam vinibhye samantat. So he is actually further explaining what this determination is, what this determined resolve is. Sankalapa prabhavan, born of sankalapa. That means imagination. Sankalapa. Kaman, desires. Tyaktva, having abandoned. Sarvan, all. Asheshata, completely. See, shesh is when something is remaining. Ashesh means nothing remaining, completely, without reserve. Manasa, by the mind. Ev means even. Indriya gramam, the whole group of senses. Not just one sense, whole group, all of them. Vi niyame, completely restraining. So it's not just only the eyes control shut, the rest of the senses also shut. Samantat, from all sides. Look at how he just keeps on painting the picture more and more beautiful for us, so that there's no doubt left. He says, abandoning without reserve all desires born of sankalpa. So when you're meditating, don't imagine anything. No sankalps. Control your mind. And completely restraining the whole group of senses by the mind from all sides. So mind should be the controller of the senses. You remember in that analogy of the chariot, horses are the senses, and that reins which are tied to the horses is the mind. So in our body, mind should control the senses. But then who should control the mind? Mind is so powerful, intellect should control the mind. One end of the rein is in the hand of the charioteer. Cannot be loosened. The same way, mind should not be loosened. It should be controlled by the intellect. And intellect should be, we should keep on making intellect subtler and subtler. That means it knows who the boss is, the Atma. If we live a life like that, at least meditate like that. If we cannot live the total 24/7 like that, meditate like that. Because that's what Lord Krishna is telling us. So abandoning without reserve all desires. So don't think that during meditation I can think about my children or grandchildren or my body or my parents. No. No imagination at that time, no thinking about anything worldly. And completely restraining the whole group of senses by the mind from all sides. Continuation of this in 25. Shane shane upramet buddhya dhriti grihitya atam sanstam mana kritva na kinchit api chintiyet. Shane shane. Gradually, slowly. Upramet. Let him attain peace. Buddhya, by the intellect. Dhriti grihitya. Achieved through determination of resolve. Okay, like a holding something in firmness. That is dhriti. For the worldly things, we use this dhriti. We do all the hard things to gain worldly pleasures. Over here, the same dhriti, same firmness for meditation. Atam sansatham, fixed in God, placed in the self. Manaha, the mind, kritva, having made. Na kinchit, not anything. Api means even, chintaet, should think of. Okay, so he says little by little or gradually, let him attain quietude, that peace, by the intellect held in firmness. Having made the mind established in the self, let him not think of anything. So do not think of anything other than God. That's what it really means. Don't think of the world, no imaginations, no desires, worldly desires. Just try to absorb, because sometimes you wonder, what should I do with my mind? Mind, just absorb it in God. That's all. So determination of resolve that is in accordance with the scriptures is really a dhriti. That is a good firmness. So meditation requires the dual process of removing the mind from the world and fixing it on God. That's why it's called vairagya and abhyas. Vairagya is when you are moving it away from the world, and abhyas is when you are attaching it to God. So that's why I said it's a dual process. Thoughts of the worldly things, thoughts of the people, etc. When do they come to our mind? When we are attached to the world. Wherever our attachment is, we just keep on thinking about that. And attachment sometimes could be negative or positive also. Somebody said something wrong to us, there's attachment to that also. We keep on thinking, why did that person do that to me or did that to me? That's attachment. Rishi Patanjali called that dvesh, rag and dvesh. But mind gets attached. So initially thoughts are in the form of sufuran. Sufuran, that means the flashes or ideas or the feelings. So he says, renounce them all, renounce at the level of that sufuran also. Don't let it sprout. So that's the why he used the word. See, there's a sarvam word and asheshata. These two words are very, so renouncing all is sarvam and fully is asheshata. Very strong words. So the term asheshata means that even the desire of this perfection, sometimes we start wondering, am I progressing or not? Do not have those kind of thoughts while meditating. That's why he used the word asheshata. Other times when you need to contemplate, when you're studying, when you're judging yourself, think about that, but not during meditation. Otherwise, your mind starts to wander. So nothing to think about at that time. Totally renounce it. So renunciation of desires is advised with a very necessary and important qualification, the term born of sankalpa. That's a very significant term actually. Going back to that Saphurna, when we insist on the implementation of Saphurna, it becomes a Sankalpa. So Saphurna and Sankalpa, so before Sankalpa, it becomes Saphurna. So don't even let it, it's almost like a germination happens and then the plant will grow. Don't let the germination happen. Thoughts lead to Sankalpa, pursuit of these objects, whatever, and the Vikalapa, revulsion for them, depending upon whether the attachment is positive or negative. So there's a Saphurna in both of them. And both Sankalpa and Vikalpa, immediately what do they create? They create impressions, the vasanas. It becomes our natural tendency. So that's why Lord Krishna is telling us, just during meditation, don't do any of that. Avoid starting any new line of imagination. Okay, so he's not telling us that when we are actively involved in the world, don't imagine. At that time, use your intellect, use your mind, use your senses. But he's telling us during meditation, this technique apply. And then this shane word is very important too. That actually means patiently. Mind will gain more and more quietude with this practice. Do not become impatient, because we want to just do meditation for a few days and we want to make sure that we have reached these pinnacles. No, it will take time. Have patience. That's why they say patience is a virtue. So just like the sense organs were controlled and restrained slowly, the mind is now, we are working on the mind during our meditation time. And mind cannot be restrained except by fixing it to the exclusive contemplation of one idea. Okay, and you just absorb that into God. That is the point. That's where we need to go. Okay, so now let's look at more instructions he's giving us for the unsteady mind. Because he knows our mind is very unsteady. Yata nischaratihi mana chanchalam asthiram tataha niyame etat atmani eva vasham nayet. Yata means from whatever cause. Nischaratihi wanders away. Manaha, mind. Chanchalam, restless. Asthiram, unsteady. Tataha, from there or from that. Niyame, having restrained. Etat means this. Atmani, in the self. Ev means alone. Vasham, under control. Nayet, let him bring. He says from whatever cause, the restless and unsteady mind wanders away. From that, let him restrain it and bring it back to be under the control of the self alone. And self means the soul or part of God. So success in meditation is not achieved in a day. The path of perfection is long. We should not lose heart, but we definitely need to control the mind. We keep on practicing. So 3 steps in the process of meditation, he is giving it to us. Number 1, forcefully remove the mind from the world. Forcefully. Because otherwise, very naturally, our mind runs towards the world. Because we have given it a freedom to the mind for countless lives. Habitually, it just runs outwardly. So this requires effort. Yatan. So the first step is forcefully remove the mind from the world. Second is with the power of discrimination, and that is the buddhi, vivek. We understand that God alone is ours. God realization is our goal. Focus your mind on God. So these thoughts got to be in the intellect. If we never put those thoughts in the intellect, then we will not make God as our goal. Then world will stay our goal, and world keeps on changing, and our mind will stay restless. That's why Swadhyaya is so important. During Swadhyaya, we put these thoughts into our mind, into our intellect. So with the power of discrimination, we got to keep on enhancing the Vivek Shakti. What is real, what is unreal, what is true, what is untrue, what is permanent, what is temporary, what is a temporary goal of life, and what is a purpose of life. We often talk about the difference between goal and purpose. Goals keep on changing. Purpose does not change. Goals are different at different time for different people. When we were in high schools, goals were different. Then we got married, goals changed. Now if we are retired, goals are different. But purpose was same even when we were a little child, a little baby, whether we knew it or not, but purpose was same for the soul. And even at this age, it's the same. That never changes. You have to remember that. And it's established with the help of the Vivek. And the third step in the process of meditation is mind comes away from God. It's just like it goes away, but it's easy to bring it back then. So first it was moving towards the world. So with effort, you have to bring back. Second is discrimination, we got to enhance. Third is if it goes away from God, it's very easy to bring it back. In fact, it does not want, I should add, it doesn't even want to go away from God. Once it feels that bliss, the eternal bliss, in that stage. And the wandering of the mind could be due to many reasons, actually. Memory of the past, presence of some tempting object, association of ideas, some attachment or aversion, or maybe even the very spiritual aspiration of the seeker. Mind starts to wander. But Lord Krishna says, whatever be the reason because of which the restless and the unsteady mind wanders away, the seeker is not to despair. Bring it back. So when he says, let him bring it back, means the seeker. Seeker should bring it back. So he said, advise for a seeker to bring back the mind which has been rushed out. So over here, he is just insisting for this kind of a technique. Conscious effort is needed in the beginning. Conscious effort. That's what I was telling you earlier. The yatan, the effort needs to be made. And next few verses, he will explain it to us, the effect of the yoga of meditation upon a true practitioner. Prashant manasam hi enam, yoginam sukham uttamam, upati shant rajasam, brahma bhutam akalmasham. Prashant manasam, one of peaceful mind. He means verily, enam means this. Yoginam, yogi. Sukham, bliss. Uttamam, supreme, highest. Upati, attains or comes. Shant rajasam, whose rajsikta is subdued. Shant ho gayi. Brahma bhutam becomes Brahma. God realized a kalmasham, one who is free from sin. So if we do the meditation, he says you will become Brahma. If we still don't practice it, we don't know. Who can tell us if we don't listen to God's words? Whose words will listen? Supreme bliss verily comes to this yogi whose mind is quite peaceful. So yeah, we all want bliss, but we got to have our mind peaceful first. Whose passion is quietened, whose rajsikta is quietened, who is free from sin, the obstacles, all those wrong tendencies of ours. And then he says, he has become Brahma. So in other words, he sees everything in connection with God. We'll talk about this verse a little bit more next time when we start. But I want to end it with what we learned in Narad Bhakti Sutras. Few months ago, we did Narad Bhakti Sutras in one of our classes. Naradji is saying the same thing. He says, Tat prapye, tad avlokyati, tad eva srinoti, tad eva bhavyati, tad eva chintyati. This was Narad Bhakti Sutra number 55. If you want to check it, check me out. He says the consciousness of the devotee whose mind is united in love with God, always absorbed in him. Such a devotee always sees him, hears him, speaks of him, thinks of him. Sadhak often ask, how can they know that they are progressing? This is the answer. If nothing else interests you, you want to talk about God, you want to read about God, you want to see God, you want to hear God, you want to feel God, only then the progress has happened. If we still our true senses want to wander outside, you could be a seeker. I'm not saying you are not a seeker, but progress has not happened. A student is a student in a kindergarten also. But we know that person is in a graduate school is a student too, but it has elevated. So Lord Krishna or Naradji They are telling us, giving us the hints over here where we need to go with our sadhana. Do not just shortchange yourself with a very lukewarm sadhana. Intensify your sadhana, just like we intensified our desires, the worldly desires. Right now is the time to intensify the love for God. And he is telling us how to do it. A day like today, very auspicious day, Ram Navami, we are supposed to make some kind of a promise to ourselves. That's why these days are celebrated. Making a promise so that we move towards godliness, towards divinity. But in order to move, we got to make some effort. Yatan. And we got to just double it up. The yatan. Sure, we are all doing it. But we got to do a little bit more if we want to progress faster. Let's end the class here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much for coming.